Another day, another Ayuk dominated storyline. Unbelievable, man. This is getting out of control, I would say, but we got to talk about it. But first, since we all have a little bit of Ayuk fatigue, we're going to talk a little bit about training camp stuff. I was at training camp. Sunil has questions about training camp. So I will answer those questions about training camp. And then we're going to talk a lot about Brandon Ayuk. So we will get to those things plus more, and we'll do it next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it's Tuesday. I got my guy, So Real, Sunil in the building. What's up, Sunil?
Just out here living the good dream. Another day, like you mentioned, another twist and turn in the Brandon Ayuk drama. I think I'm over it, Jesse. Man. I think I'm over it.
Yeah, I am too, man. It's hard not to talk about, right? Like it's the thing that's happening. So it's really hard to just not talk about it. But it is one of those things that I do want to know the answer to, because it's really hard to gauge what the expectations of the season should really be. Do we know he's going to be traded? Is he going to play? Is he going to hold out games? Is he going to be traded, and do they get players in return, or is it just picks? Like, there's so many moving parts to this thing. And until we know for sure, it's really hard to pin down, hey, this is what a season should look like, or here's what our expectations should be. So there is a lot of moving parts. It definitely seems like I refreshed Twitter 1,000 times today. And every time I did, it seemed like there was a new report. You had Adam Schefter come out and say, well, the Steelers are out. And then Rappaport comes out and goes, Steelers are still in. And then Schefter comes back and goes, Steelers are back in. It's like, all right, guys. Clearly, there's a lot going on. It's constantly changing. So if you guys can't keep up, it's going to be hard for us to keep up. All right, that being said, let's take a break from the Ayuk stuff, and let's just start with some camp conversations. Now, it's been a couple days since I've attended camp. Some things have certainly happened since then. Jacob Cowing returned to practice, although he's in non-contact. You have Pearsall hurt again. CMC's out. Mitchell's out. Things have changed a bit. That being said, I do have a good feel about what happened at camp, or at least for the 4 days I was there. And you have questions. So why don't you shoot from the hip?
I mean, I think we've gotten into so much talk about who may or may not be on the team. We're forgetting that there's still a team that's out there. And from my estimation, I think that team's still really, really good with or without Ayuk, right? So I'm interested. I guess we can start out with, because I have some questions about position groups and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But one thing that I think has been missing from the 49ers in the past few years, because they didn't have those first round picks in the Trey Lance draft. But we do know the history of the 49ers, that they're really good at drafting, and they're able to find pieces that could end up being an all-pro. They just tend to hit on that. So talk to me specifically about the rookies, Jesse, that you saw out there. Tell me what your overall thought process is about this rookie class. And then I want you to go out on a limb and tell me which one do you feel like is most likely to be an all-pro.
Oh, that's tough. Damn. Okay. Oh, gosh. Shoot. Okay. Well, I'll say the rookie class as a whole has been pretty good. I mean, Mustafa did some things before I arrived that were pretty notable. He certainly looks the part. Just physically, he looks the part. Green is a good cover corner. I think he's as advertised. Pearsall did a couple good things while I was there, although I still have a lot of questions with him. Cowing, I didn't get to see. Schrader has been the best rookie out of all of them. I mean, top to bottom, he is killing it every single day. Certainly is going to carve out a spot on this team. I'd be shocked if he doesn't make the roster. which means I don't know what happens to Garendo, who I also didn't get to see. Bethune, I think, is trying to catch up to what it's like to play in the NFL. Normal for a rookie. Let's see what else. Pooney's looked good. I think consistency wise, he was probably one of the more consistent players, not just rookies. Him and Schrader both. So I think overall the draft class is done pretty good. I mean, it's early returns for sure, but I think that the rookie class looks pretty solid, especially for rookies. I don't think that you necessarily expect every player to contribute, but I can see ways, even like Ricky Pearsall, right? If Ayuk's on this team, Ricky Pearsall to me looked like the best punt returner. He was the most sure-handed. I think he's got a little bit of wiggle. I can see a path where he can contribute to this team through special teams. I could see a scenario where Renardo Green starts, where Malik Mustafa does make an impact on special teams and maybe creeps his way into the starting lineup before the end of the year. Pooney might be your right guard. So there's definitely a path to success for a lot of these guys. As far as an all-pro goes, gosh, man, that's so tough.
Were you out there when were you out there for training camp when Huff was a rookie?
No, I was there last year, his second year.
Oh, okay. Got it. So did you see all pro in Huff in that training camp?
Yeah, I did. Actually,
Okay.
I did. I mean, he was all over the place. He broke up a ton of play. He actually a player that looks like and I'm not going to say he's going to make it. It's really, really hard. And somebody asked me about this player yesterday. Are they will they be an all pro? Actually, they asked me when I was out at camp, and I said, I'm not going to go out on a limb and say this player is going to be an all pro, but you could see where this player is going to be really, really good. And that was Diamador Lenore. Like, he's having himself a hell of a camp. So he is really showing out day in and day out. As far as the rookie class goes, I mean, I don't know that any of them are going to be all pros, but if I had to pick one to be an all pro, I'll go Malik Mustafa. I don't know that you're going to see that this year, just because there are some good safeties ahead of him. But physically, he's already ready for the NFL. He doesn't have to get his man body ready for the NFL. He's there. He clearly looks the part. He's just going to have to learn to play at an NFL level. But I think he has the range. I think he can play in the box. I think he can play single high. I just think he has a lot of attributes that can really help this team long term. And I think safety is one of those positions where there's also a lot of churn as far as who's good in the league and who's not. I mean, just a couple years ago, you had Adams as one of the best safeties in the league, and now he's struggling to even make rosters. So There's a lot of turnover at safety. I think because of that, because he already has his NFL body, I think Malik Mustafa is probably the safest bet to potentially make it to all pro status.
I like that. Now I know we gotta save a lot of time for Ayuk.
But yeah, I mean, listen, I like this veering from the Ayuk thing. So ask away.
So one thing last year I think we saw, and I think you were impressed with specifically, was Wilkes' interaction with the players.
Yeah.
He came in as a new coach and whatnot. Now, I mean, Sorensen isn't new, but obviously has a lot more responsibility. We obviously have, I keep forgetting his name, but the guy from the Chargers, Staley's obviously there. We're getting high praise from some of the guys, like Diamador Lenore, I think gave him high praise. But being out there, what are you seeing as far as their coaching style? Is there any changes that you're seeing as far as what they're doing to that defense? Because, some of the guys that I follow on Twitter and whatnot, defense is looking pretty impressive. Seems like they look better than they did the year before. So how much of that is personnel? How much of that is coaching and what they're instilling?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. The secondary in general is stacked this year, Sunil. This is the best secondary I've seen since the 90s, in my opinion, on this team. I think this team secondary, the defense, this is the strength this year. I think it's very deep. There's a lot of guys that can play different positions. You have Green, you have Lenore that can play inside or out. I think you have somebody like Ward that can travel. Ambry Thomas, who was essentially a starter last year, might be your fifth or sixth, might be your sixth best corner, might not make the team depending on some politics. So yeah, I think that this is where things are going to start. So I think the personnel has something to do with it, but I definitely see. I think Staley's very hands-on. He was fun to watch. So is Sorensen. I think they both are doing a great job. And schematically, you can see the change. You really can. You're seeing Bosa standing up a lot when he's rushing. You're seeing guys, defensive linemen drop into coverage. Never hardly saw that. There's a lot of stunts, a lot of twists. You can see the creativity is at least being practiced. I've got to imagine that's going to take place during the season as well. So I think schematically they might be improved. And I think player-wise they might be improved. So yeah, this defense I think is going to be a really good defense this year.
I like that. And let's stick with that trend because I think there's this obviously ominous gray cloud over this 49ers offseason.
Mm-hmm.
But they did bring in a lot of free agents, right? And Leonard Floyd obviously being the big name. They brought in some other guys along the defensive line. Isaac, as it pronounced, Yadam,
yeah.
The corner. Tell me how you feel about this, free agency class that they brought in. Who stood out? How are they fitting in? And were there any surprises? Are there any flops that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think so. Elliott didn't show a lot while I was there. One day he didn't practice, and then he just really didn't flash until the final day. And then I've heard since I've left, he's done a really good job. So I'm not going to like bury him, but he was kind of tough to get a gauge on. Yadam by far is the most surprising to me. I wasn't big on the Yadam signing, and I don't know that he's still necessarily going to start. A lot of people penciled him in to be a starter, and maybe he does. But just physically, I thought he was the best built corner out of all of them. He's very, very long, and I think he held his own for the most part. I don't think he's a perfect corner by any means, but he's definitely better than what I probably gave him credit for when they signed him. Floyd, I think, is probably going to be the most impactful player, although if I'm just going off of practice, he almost had zero impact. But I think his time in the league is proof in the pudding that he's going to be a good player. Collins didn't do a lot. Gross Matos, I thought actually flashed almost every day that I was there. I think his biggest question mark is can he stay healthy? He's been in and out of the lineup in Carolina for years. So, yeah, I think overall the class they brought in is good. I don't know that there's any like bona fide superstars, but I think there's some solid pieces that can keep this thing afloat. But I will also say this. The guys they brought in to replace Armstead and Kinlaw, if we're just looking at the eye test, they're much smaller on the interior. Now, we know that they struggled last year to stop the run in the interior at times. I wonder what it will look like this year if they don't do things like a bear front where they have 5 players right up front and 3 defensive tackles on the field at the same time, which they were working some in practice and it was working very, very well. But if you're just going with like a wide 9 front, 4-man front, I still question whether they have the size and power up the middle to consistently stop the run, but we'll see.
Speaking to that, obviously a major part of stopping the run, especially in this system, linebackers. Dre Greenlaw obviously not going to be there. We don't know in what capacity he's going to be or when he's going to be available for the 49ers. They brought in some guys to be, to come in and potentially be a starter, but they also have been developing some guys. Talk to me about the linebacking core, what you saw out of there, who's impressing, and how do you think they're going to stack up this season?
Yeah, I think that there certainly is a concern without Greenlaw, and Greenlaw is a hell of a player. But Greenlaw is also a free agent at the end of this year, and he's coming off of a major injury. I wouldn't be shocked if they're comfortable with moving on from Greenlaw at the end of this year. I think Winters has showed out quite a bit, and I think he's the natural fill-in for Greenlaw. And for 2 straight training camps, Jalen Graham has looked incredible, man. He looked it's funny because I was there with Coach, and it wasn't even me. I just kind of kept my mouth shut, and he was like, "Dude, Jalen Graham's a guy. You weren't lying." I'm like, "I told you, man. He's really, really good." So he noticed it without me saying anything. And then every day, every time he'd make a play, I'd like nudge him, like, "Hey, there's my guy. There's my guy." So I think Graham's a really good player. I think Winters last year, I didn't see a lot from him. Graham was clearly the better player. I think Winters has closed that gap. Now, I think they also play a little bit, one's a Will, one's a Mike. And I think because of that, Winters will be the natural fill-in for Greenlaw playing next to Warner. But he is a really, really good player, and he's starting to show out as well at camp. One of the bigger plays made during camp was made by him. Very, very impressive player. So I think they're actually fine at linebacker.
Is Campbell the guy they brought in to be the
to
be the starter? What did you see out of him?
I mean, during okay, first of all, physically he's massive. He looks like he should be on the defensive line. He's a big, big guy. He towers over everybody. He's just physically imposing. But he's also very slow-footed. Like during the one-on-one drills, he was very slow-footed. He did a lot of shuffling. You wouldn't lift his legs up and his feet up the way that the other players were, like if they were doing chopping drills. I think once 11 on 11 started, he was fine. I just would prefer to go with the better athlete, the younger players. He's probably knows where to be more than the other guys, but I like the youth in Winters or Graham over Campbell, in my opinion.
Cool. So let's play a game. Training camp game.
Okay, all right.
All right. I'm gonna bring up the position group. You can answer better, looks better than last year, looks worse than last year, or too close to call it.
Okay. All right.
All right. So we'll start defense, safeties. Are they looking better than last year? Worse than last year?
Can I clarify? Clarify? Are we talking Super Bowl time last year, or are we talking this same time as last year? Like this time last year?
Let's do apples to apples. So let's talk about confidence going in at this time last year.
Okay. I'll say slightly worse because Hufanga still is not there. I think Jair Brown certainly improved. Right now, Mustafa is not even a starter. Odom has looked good, but he's built like a corner. It's not ideal that he starts. And I think last year they had two guys they could count on for sure to be starters. And then Jair Brown was an up-and-coming rookie. This year they have right now one for sure starter. They have the up-and-coming rookie in Mustafa, but Hufanga's not there yet. So I'm going to have to say slightly worse because of that.
Okay. Let's just keep moving now. Secondary. Corners
way better. Way better. I mean, it's not even close. Way better. Now, a lot of that could be skewed because Ayuk's not there and he was a menace last year. But I have to go off of they have a lot more players that they can throw out there. Luter's healthy. Womack's healthy. Green looks really good. I like what I saw from Yada. Rock Ya-Sin's a veteran. Yeah, they're way better for sure.
Okay, linebackers.
I'm actually gonna go slightly better.
Interesting.
And that's without Greenlaw, but because what was behind Greenlaw, I didn't necessarily. It was like Flanagan Fowles, two rookies. There just wasn't a lot behind him. Now I feel like you've got three guys that could potentially start next to Warner. And then that means you have two guys coming off the bench to where if Warner had to miss some time or the starter next to Warner had to miss some time, Warner's great, but the drop off isn't near as big as what it would have been at this time last year. So I'm going to go slightly better, actually.
Cool. And then D-line.
This one's interesting because they're clearly better at the edge, but I think they're worse up the middle. So I'll go wash.
Why Wash is interesting because what I wanted to follow up with, I know last year your biggest issue was the D line. With the D line was depth.
Mm-hmm.
This year, are you feeling that same way?
I think that there's more depth on the edge, which is why I feel better about the edge. But there's not a lot of depth up the middle. Not that I've seen yet. There's certainly some names, but I don't know that I can trust any of those guys past the starters, really. So that's why I'm like, I'll go with Wash at this point.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So safeties were a little bit worse. Corners were way better.
Way better.
Linebackers slightly better.
Mm-hmm.
D-line Wash. So if you take the average, that means you're potentially saying this defense is going to be better than it last year.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I have to say, I loved the Wilkes hire. You know that at the time. I loved watching him coach last year. I think he was very hands-on, but just schematically, you can see things that you haven't seen from this defense are showing up in practice. And that's something to get excited about as well.
Nice. So some good news out there for, the faithful, that there is positive stuff coming out of camp as well. All right.
Yeah.
So let's go. Let's go. And on the offense, I'm going to go backwards to forward.
Okay.
Just because I kind of know where we're going with one of the groups, but
right.
Let's start with running back room.
Way better. Okay. Way better. A lot of the names are the same. Most of the names, right? CMC, he's a wash. He's just as good as he's ever been. Mitchell, hurt again. I get it. But when he was out there, he's got his explosiveness back. He looks like Mitchell, rookie Mitchell. Like he's running with a lot of pep. He's finishing runs by lowering his shoulder. He's clearly feels that he's in a competition, and it's lit a fire in him. Mason still runs as hard as he ever has. Way better blocker, way better pass catcher, way better route runner. And then Schrader is a hell of a lot better than TDP. In fact, I'll answer Floyd's question here where he says, are you saying Schrader has looked better than Mustafa, Slick Rick, and Green? Yes, and it's not particularly close. He looks the best out of all the rookies, and I think it's by a landslide. So yes, I think this running back room is way better.
How would you rank them right now as far as obviously CMC is the starter? Who's 2, 3, and 4 behind him?
Mason, Mitchell, and then Schrader. But I also can see a scenario where Mitchell is very expendable. Like if they could get something for him, like a 5th round pick, totally fine moving on from him. Because I believe Schrader's a good player. Yeah.
Nice. Let's go Purdy, quarterbacks.
Better because he's not coming off the injury, right? Like I don't think he looked awful by any means last year. Certainly didn't look awful this year, but there was still the what if. Is he fully healthy? Is he not fully healthy? That question's completely gone. So yeah, definitely feel better about Purdy. Way better.
A lot has been talked about his added muscle, his physique. Are you seeing anything translate into zip?
No, I don't see any change there. But again, I don't think that I need to see a change there for me to feel better. I just need to know that he's healthy. That's all I care about.
Cool. What about, obviously, luckily, knock on wood, these last year, we didn't need to really go into the well with the backup QBs, but, as 49er fans, we know the backup QBs can be extremely important. What are you seeing out of Dobbs? What are you seeing out of the rookie that they draft or they picked up as well?
Everybody knows how much I hate Sam Darnold. Never wanted him to touch the field for the 49ers. That being said, I feel better about Sam Darnold as a backup quarterback than any of these guys. So take that for what it's worth.
Well, Sam Darnold is listed as the starter over in Minnesota right now. So
yeah, we'll see how long that lasts. We'll see how long that lasts. But either way, I'm not a big Sam Darnold fan at all, but I feel much better about Sam Darnold than I do Dobbs or Allen or any of these guys.
Cool. Tight end room.
Wash. I mean, I didn't feel good about it last year behind Kittle, and I don't feel good about it this year behind Kittle. None of those guys are separating whatsoever. Nobody is showing out. Latu's showing that he's still not a good football player. So yeah, I would say it's a wash.
Cool. Obviously, wide receiver is a little incomplete, but let's just talk about the wide receivers that are out there. I would have to assume it's going to be worse since BA obviously was the star of last year in training camp. But tell us what you're seeing in the wide receiver room.
With no BA, it's clearly worse. It's not close. If BA were to play, I would actually feel better about this receiver room because Debo's in much better shape. Pearsall, although, he's been hurt and hasn't shown a ton, he's flashed enough to where it's like, okay, I can see where he can grow and fit something. Didn't get a chance to see Cowing, but he brings something different. I think Ronnie Bell is way better than he was this time last year. Trent
JJ.
Taylor, believe it or not, is very shorthanded. Jawan Jennings is every bit as good as he's ever been. So I would feel better if Ayuk was on this team, but right now, definitely way worse without Ayuk.
Cool. And the position group that used to be the most talked about group on the 49ers, offensive line. How are you feeling about the offensive line?
Yeah, offensive line, without Trent, of course worse. Of course worse. Same thing though. If Trent plays, much better. There's way more depth in my opinion this year. Like there's actually you can look at it and say, all right, I don't know that they have 5 starting caliber offensive linemen, right? Which I don't know that they did last year either, in my opinion. But they certainly have 8 or 9 guys that should be rostered on an NFL team. I don't think that was the case last year. I think they had 5 guys that were starting. I don't know that all of them were starting caliber. And then they had a bunch of hodgepodge behind them that probably shouldn't have been on an NFL roster. So I feel way better about the offensive line this year with Trent than I did last year without Trent. Of course, way worse.
Let's talk about the biggest question or the biggest point of contention on that offensive line. What are you seeing out of Colton?
He looks better.
Yeah,
he actually looks better. There was a day where he got beat multiple times by Bosa. No shame in that. But outside of that, during one-on-ones against Bosa, he's held his own. And when he goes up against Floyd in the 11-on-11s, Floyd isn't just having his way with him by any means. I think Colton looks a little bit better than he did last year.
Cool. And probably the most likely to be an all-pro on this team. Tell me about Michigan's own Jake Moody. What have you seen out of Jake Moody?
So Moody actually was like 12 for 12 kicking. And then the final day I was there, he made his first 2 and had one of the worst misses I've ever seen, wide left from like 45 yards. In fact, it reminded me, remember against Seattle a few years ago when Jimmy Garoppolo was a quarterback and they had the backup kicker in because Robbie Gould was hurt. And in overtime, they had that wide left kick on the chip shot, but it was just it was like so far left that it ended up in the team tunnel. That's what happened to Moody. And so then you look at it and say, okay, well, how does he bounce back after that? They moved him back 3 yards and he missed wide left again. So that wasn't encouraging by any means. Up until that point, it was great. And then you saw the bad miss followed by another miss left. And I was like, okay, this is kind of what you're worried about. So I don't know, man. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, washed. Why? Exactly, washed. Yeah, we'll go wash. I'll go wash. But no Mitch Wishnowsky. And almost every day, they were trying out a new punter. So hopefully he's able to get back. I mean, he's a very, very good player.
Yeah.
Mitch Wishnowsky is one of the better punters in the league. He just is. So hopefully he's back. Without him, that's going to be kind of rough. So they're going to need him back for sure.
So this is the thing, because I think there's this, like I mentioned, there's this dark cloud over the team right now. And obviously BA and Trent not being there is a big deal. But Trent's going to be back. There's no way they're letting him walk. They're just waiting to figure out the BA thing. We know that they're willing. They'll pay Trent. They have the money to do it. I think they'll do it.
I think I would agree with you. I don't think if it's up to the 49ers, there's no way Trent's not playing this year.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that they're not trying to talk Trent into playing, which is kind of out of their control. I don't know. I don't it's not like I have any sources on it or anything like that.
You think he wants to retire?
I have a feeling he might be contemplating it. I do.
That's interesting because I mean he was pretty adamant he wasn't at the end of last season, so something must have changed.
I'm not. Listen, don't take that as gospel, but it just seems I'm not willing to completely rule that out.
I think he just doesn't want to practice.
I hope that's the case. And if anybody cannot practice, it would probably be a 36-year-old Trent Williams. And I hope he's there. They need him back.
Let's assume Trent Williams is back. And at some version of Trent Williams, he's still the best left tackle in the game. Even if he falls out to top 5, let's just say he's there.
Yeah.
Let's say BA is not there. Pretty much everywhere on the field outside of the wide receiver, right? Everywhere else was either better, wash, or maybe slightly worse, but, dependent. You still had faith there. So it looks like overall this team could potentially be better on field than it was last season based off of talent, not only starters, but depth. And it's really just whether or not figuring out who's going to be the starting wide receiver outside of Debo and JJ, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think they can hold serve without BA for sure. And also, let's not forget that the 49ers every year make a trade near the deadline. So I don't think this team's fully complete either. So I don't think the sky's falling without BA. I think if you add in the fact that some of the other teams around them have, at least on paper, clearly gotten better, and with no Ayuk, they still would have an uphill battle to get back to the Super Bowl. And I would feel much better about that battle if BA is on this team. Although I don't think it's impossible without BA, especially knowing the trade deadline is still coming. So
yeah, I mean, this team did make it to a Super Bowl with Emmanuel Sanders, and that's not saying Emmanuel Sanders isn't great. He's a great wide receiver, but much different from BA. Didn't have the blocking that BA had, but was able to seamlessly fit into this system because I think Kyle Shanahan's system is just really good for wide receivers. Like wide receivers look good in his system, and I think that's one position that I think Shanahan does well with is getting wide receivers in the right place. And a better Purdy, which this is his 3rd year. He's played a lot. He's played more football than most rookies in their 3rd year because of how deep and meaningful games too, right?
For sure.
So you would assume that there's going to be better Purdy, which means that's better for the receivers as well. But that's not what anybody's here to hear right now. They want to talk about one thing and one thing only.
Well, let's get to these super chats and then we'll talk about it. I'm happy we successfully made it over 30 minutes without really talking about Brandon Ayuk, other than within the context of the team, which is pretty impressive. Always Drip says, Jesse, is our wide receivers really struggling to separate without Ayuk being there? Yeah, they are. Definitely.
I mean, and here's the thing.
It doesn't. And by the way, I just want to clear this up because that doesn't mean that they can't ever separate. People do this weird thing where if you say, hey, this is happening, they go, well, here's the one time it didn't. You're like, okay, but that doesn't mean that play in and play out, they're doing what they need to do. Like, let's just look at this logically. Last year during the Super Bowl, wide receivers struggled to separate. So there's a chance that that's still an issue. Ricky Pearsall, when he went up against NFL caliber corners in college, struggled to separate when in press man situations. So isn't it a possibility that would still be the issue? Doesn't mean these players can't get open. Doesn't mean that they every single time out in a press man issue can't win. It just means that more often than not, they are struggling to separate, when there is a man situation going on around them. That's all I'm saying.
And, I think it's funny when people say without Ayuk being there, because if Ayuk's the only receiver that could break separation, this team would still have a problem breaking separation, because that's only one player that's able to do that consistently.
For sure. But what does happen is when Ayuk's there, it pushes everybody down the depth chart, meaning instead of Debo going against number 1 corners, he can now go against number 2. Instead of Pearsall having to play maybe the X spot, he can play in the slot, right? Mm-hmm. And now you've got two-way goes. You're usually off the line of scrimmage, so you can't be jammed. Like, you can see a path why Ayuk helps everybody else get open, because either the competition across from them isn't as good, or it puts players in a more natural position than what they are in now without Ayuk.
Got it. And we also have to say, obviously I'm the optimistic guy. They're going up against one of the better secondaries in the league as well. So I think obviously, we're looking to win a Super Bowl, so they're going to be going up against a really good secondary all through the playoffs. Mm-hmm. But at least regular season wise, they're not going to meet this level of competition every single week. So,
yeah, what I can say is last year, and this is a slight indictment on the receivers, but also big ups to the secondary. Last year, there was pretty much 0 covered sacks from the defense. Like, if there was a sack, it's because the defensive line just flat out won. This year, there was like 3 covered sacks a day. It's like the offensive line did its job. Quarterback just didn't have an option on the field. And that was a pretty regular occurrence. So, yeah, some of that is on the receivers, but some of that is on the secondary just being flat out better than they were last year. So I can see it both ways. Dave says, all right, what up, guys? Catching a live one, BA, be gone, and let's get something going this year. But whatever, good to see you guys and the chat. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, he's gone when he's gone, and until then, he's still here. So Chris says, Ayuk wants to be a Steeler and can stop any trades by not signing a new contract. Facts. Browns and Pats have no chance. So what are the 49ers waiting for? The Steelers to give them something that they care about? I mean, you can't just take nothing for them. Floyd the Barber says, yeah, okay, this one I already answered. I just started earlier. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Brandon Ayuk. And we can talk about it through the lens of Kyle Shanahan and then also what CMC said today. What were your thoughts when listening to the players talk about the situation and then Shanahan talk about the situation at hand? What did you walk away with?
I mean, obviously CMC slipping, being one of his former ex-teammates, right? That, I think that sums up what the team feels. At least the players, right? Mm-hmm. They feel like this isn't getting resolved and BA is on his way to being traded. And if you see it through that lens, Kyle Shanahan, I think, has been, usually when it comes to these negotiations, he's always like, anything could happen. Like, we might be dead on Sunday. Like there's always like, it could go any way. But he verified that Brandon Ayuk has the ability to talk to other teams. I don't think that's ever been on the table at any of these negotiations, right? It's never gotten to the point where it's like, yeah, not only is trading just quote unquote on the table, like they always answer, everything's on the table. No, there's action being taken towards a trade. And in my mind, that means that it's more likely going that direction than them finding a solution, right? We know that when Trent Williams was on the fence and he had another option with Kansas City and he could take that, Kyle Shanahan stepped in and said, yo, we need this. This is a guy that we need. Get him his money. Obviously, you would think that this would be the point where it's like, if he needs Brandon Ayuk, he's like, let's get there and let's get this guy, especially with what you're mentioning about the wide receivers. But he said, hey, we're prepared for this and I'm good to go with whoever's out there. And I don't think I need Brandon Ayuk. And I think that that's what it would take to get a deal done with Brandon Ayuk, is Kyle Shanahan saying, I need this guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think
my
that
takeaway was.
no, and I agree wholeheartedly. That's certainly what he put out. And maybe that's the stance behind the scenes. I also think that there's a real possibility where he's not a dummy. He knows he can't sit there and be like, yeah, we need him. Because if they don't have him, then what does that say to the rest of the team and your confidence in them? So there could be a scenario where behind the scenes, like, listen, get this done. And they're like, we can't. Like money wise, with Purdy about to get paid or X coming up or whatever, it's like we can't go above this number, Kyle. Like he's not willing to accept it. We don't have a choice here. So I think that it could be both. But yeah, I think I agree with you. I mean, outwardly, certainly it was, hey man, we're good. Next man up. We trust in the rookies that we took. We'll figure it out from here. And as Showtime says, Pearsall caught a bomb today against D'Lo. And I think maybe you were Showtime, maybe not. Anyways, somebody was really like big up and like Pearsall yesterday was like, listen, like Pearsall's going to be able to fill in for Ayuk. And I'm like, I would pump the brakes on his rookie year being able to just step right in and get 1,300 yards. But maybe you're right. The problem is that he did, and that's awesome. But he promptly got hurt for the third time during training camp / OTAs. That's not good. And I can also say, seeing Pearsall in person, he's very, 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 very slender, very small framed. And he's 24 years old. So I don't know that there's a lot of room for growth there based off of what his frame will hold. So that is a bit of a concern. Third time already being hurt. It's hard to quote unquote stack days if you can't even stay out there. But yeah, man, I think that overall your read on what Shanahan said is right there. So let's talk about some of the things that we've heard as far as what might be out there for Ayuk. And you tell me if that's enough for you to move him in that scenario. So let's start with Cleveland. We've heard that what's the name of the wide receiver? I'm drawing a blank. Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper and a pick. Let's say second or third round pick. How do you feel about that trade if that were to come to fruition?
I mean, Amari Cooper, if you look at Amari Cooper's stats and Brandon Ayuk's stats just side by side, not like the extended or whatever the extra stats are, pretty identical. They both maximize yards off of very not as many opportunities, which I think bodes well. So, I mean, I think Brandon Ayuk is a better receiver than Amari Cooper. Obviously younger. I think he fits into this system better. However, Amari Cooper is done well wherever he goes. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is. It doesn't matter what the system is. It doesn't matter, what the pressure is. From the Raiders to the Cowboys to Cleveland, he's always, even when he's not supposed to be the number one option, he's outplaying the number one option. And people are wondering, I wonder why people keep trading him, because all he does is produce. So I would be intrigued by that option. If we have to lose Ayuk, right? This is obviously
your preference is not to lose Ayuk.
Yeah. Both of us have mentioned how he's one of our favorite players. He's my favorite player on the team. One of your favorite players on the team.
Yeah, for sure.
But if we have to lose him, which I'm working under that impression right now, that I am intrigued by. Much rather it would be a second round pick than a third, but I like the player coming back.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's not the long-term answer that Ayuk is, but for one season, if you're still trying to keep a Super Bowl caliber team on the field, Amari Cooper keeps you afloat there. And then you also get a pick for the future to draft whatever. I think that's extremely fair. So I would love that coming back in return. Okay, let's talk about the Patriots. Now, the Patriots rumor is Kendrick Bourne, who has been here. I mean, they've already got Breida. They've already got Taylor. Why not just bring back Kendrick Bourne, get that 2019 squad going, and a second round pick, which you would assume would be a pretty high pick from the Patriots. How would you feel about that trade?
So this one, I mean, I get why Shanahan would be intrigued, because he likes people that are familiar with this system. Bourne's coming off of an injury. What is he going to look like? Like that deal, I'm not as excited about because I just Kendrick Bourne. If we were that excited about him, we would have never let him walk. You know what I mean? To bring him back and lose, I just think that drop off is a lot. Even though I do think that if Kendrick Bourne's healthy, he'll be productive on this team, but that it doesn't excite me.
Yeah, I'm not excited about that, especially coming off of a injury that he had last year. So not a fan of that. What if it was Judon in a second round pick? How would you feel about that? Better, probably.
It's better, but where's
It's
Judon
definitely better.
playing right now? Like, what is he?
Yeah, I think he would
And
be.
is he like? Is
Yeah, I
he
mean he's more
linebacker?
of a
Like,
pass rusher, and I think what makes him intriguing is he can do a little bit of everything and has with the Patriots. And you look at what I talked about is happening with this defense at training camp and all the different things that players are being asked to do, that he would fit really, really well into that and kind of make things a little bit more interesting for opposing offenses and a little bit more confusing.
can he play interior line?
No.
So I mean, what we're gonna have So what? Leonard goes to the like. I mean, what are we?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I
Like,
mean, it's just more depth, I
it's a
guess.
great player, but
Yeah.
it's not a position of need. I would say, like in the sense
Yeah.
that are we bringing back a player that is guaranteed going to start on our team? I don't know. If you had to choose between Leonard Floyd and this version of Judon, obviously back in the day, Judon, we're talking, no brainer, but is he for sure beating out Leonard Floyd as a starter?
No.
I don't know. So that's why that wouldn't make sense to me, because you gotta bring back a starter. Like if you're going to lose an all pro level starter, you got to bring back somebody that's going to start on your team, I would say. And that's why Bourne is guaranteed a starting position, maybe based off of seniority, quote unquote. And but if you're just saying, is he the best player? I don't know if he's better than whoever is going to be third best, Pearsall or Cowing or Conley or whomever. Like I don't see that. So that's why I think New England, for me, doesn't make sense unless they're throwing in that corner, like one of their corners, or
that would be nice.
What I mean?
Yeah. Give us Gonzalez. How about
right.
that?
Yeah, we'll take Gonzalez.
Yeah, we'll take another Oregon Duck for sure. And then the Steelers, we don't really know the compensation. I mean, there were some things thrown out, but none of them are for sure. And not that we know for sure what it is from the Patriots or the Browns, but there has at least been something rumored that you can say, okay, I could see that being realistic. I don't know what the hell the Steelers. I mean, I think they have options.
So I think what they'll try to do is Van Jefferson in a pick, right? Because they have Pickens and they drafted Roman Wilson, who's, one thing about the Steelers, they know how to draft receivers. Like they rarely miss on a receiver. So I'm assuming that Roman Wilson is going to be really, really good. And I'm sure they look at Pickens, Ayuk and Wilson and say, hey, we just upgraded to potentially like one of the better receiving cores in the league. What if Pickens was on the board? Pickens and a pick, they're trying to just go straight up, because I know Pickens has had some run-ins with that team. He's had some quote unquote, what's it called? Like attitude issues. Let's put it that way. Let's say they want a clean break from him. Would that intrigue you? Let's say Pickens and a second or third round pick.
Yeah, hell yeah, that would intrigue me. But I also don't feel like he fits the culture of what the 49ers are looking for, because he does throw some fits. He's trying to get paid, I think, after this year. So
that's the big thing, I think.
He's going to want the football. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, and we go into the same situation that we're having next year with him, like another receiver that probably feels like they should be making top tier money.
Yeah, it makes it really, really, really
The
tough.
one that I know it was talked about earlier, but the Raiders with Devontae Adams.
Mm-hmm.
Do you? We're not hearing anything, obviously, but
No,
usually what happens is it ends up being a team that nobody was talking about.
nobody's talking about. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I can see
If the
that. Yeah,
Raiders come in and they're like, we know Devontae is not going to re up here. We need to get our receiver of the future. Let's go get BA. They obviously have he obviously has a relationship with the coach over there in Pierce. That's a no brainer to me. Devontae Adams and whatever pick they give, I think that would be the most exciting out of all. I'll go that Raiders trade, Cleveland, and then I'm probably not excited about any other trades.
I agree with you. I just think the hard part is BA has to agree, and I don't know that he's agreeing to any of those other teams. You know,
Even
I don't
if
know
Pierce is
why.
there as the coach?
Maybe, but you're going to a crappy organization and
Yeah.
in a division that is you got an up and coming potentially Chargers team. You've already got the million time Super Bowl champs and the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's tough. That's a
But
tough buy.
I don't see that much difference with the Steelers or Washington.
Yeah,
You
but the
know,
Steelers barely made the playoffs last year. They're they're better on paper. They've got a way better offensive line on paper. Obviously, adding him should make them better, and then their quarterback situation is better. You're probably at least making the playoffs if you add BA to that roster. So Raiders
and
just
then
aren't.
Washington, they're far away. Like they're not any
They're not.
near the
They're
team.
not even offering. Yeah, yeah. They're not even offering because they're
No,
not
but what
willing
I'm
to give up
saying are
the
the
floor.
teams that quote unquote we're seeing be able to play for, right? It's
Mhm.
Washington and Pittsburgh. At least this is what's being
For
discussed.
sure. Yeah.
It to me, neither of those organizations are slam dunks at all, right?
Yeah,
So
but Jaden Daniels is his best friend, right? So I can understand that from that
Jaden
aspect.
Daniels is best. I can, but okay. So let's say that's the reason. But then familiarity and wanting to play with your best friend, he's tight with Antonio Pierce as well. So I mean,
Yeah,
that's
he
your
is.
coach.
And
So
maybe he would. I don't know. I don't know
I
for
don't know
sure. He
if the
might.
Raiders
He
would
might
pay
say yes
him.
to that.
Maybe they're not going
Yeah.
to pay him. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like the I don't see a trade package. I think that the Cleveland to me is the most realistic for both sides because Cleveland's a good team. So I don't understand why BA wouldn't want to play there. Like
I agree. I
there,
mean
he'd go
it's
in there.
Cleveland. It's just
He has a
Cleveland,
quarterback.
probably.
I mean, Deshaun Watson,
Maybe.
say what you want. I mean,
Maybe.
he can't. I mean, we know he's been a good
He's
quarterback.
gonna have to figure it out this year.
Yeah,
He's either gonna be okay or he's not, and we're gonna know this year because this is like the third year, dude. You
there.
like
The
something's got to give.
system is pretty similar to the 49ers offense.
Yeah,
Run first and then, play off of that. Really good
yeah,
defense. I mean, it's very similar to the 49ers. They're obviously in a tough division, but they're willing to give him the money. He'll be on a competitive roster. He'll be the bona fide one, especially if Cooper's gone, right? So he'll be featured. I guess I'm not understanding why he doesn't want that situation.
yeah. I don't know either. Honestly, I
But
think Cleveland's a good team.
yeah. It's interesting because that Mayoko, when he's saying it's starting to seem like Brandon maybe not knowing what he wants anymore. I wonder if like it's too many options at this point. Like there's too much on the board that he's having a hard time deciding what he really wants. And I've been there before. Like
Yeah.
it's easy when it's just like, okay, it's either this or this. But now when it's like, oh wow, I have to decide between 3 or 4 different options. Like what is I don't want to make the wrong choice.
Well, he wants to be wanted, so here you go, BA. This is
Yeah.
what you asked for, right? Like this is
Is
what you asked for. Don't shy away now.
how are you? Because it seems like the sentiment on BA with the fan base, there's people that are turning on him, right? Obviously, I think that the beat writers have gotten the marching orders. You know, bring this guy down a peg, start talking about he's childish and he's this and that. He doesn't know what he wants, all that kind of stuff. But what is your sentiments about this? Obviously, it's gotten to a point where it's dragging. Do you blame BA? Do you blame the team? Is this just business? Like, what's your sentiment around how this makes you feel about the team and the said parties?
I gotta go here in a minute, but BA, I don't know that I'm frustrated with BA because he might only have one chance at getting paid, and I totally understand where he's coming from. I also don't know that I would be frustrated with the team if they had just pulled the plug on this way earlier, or just said, "Hey, our offer's our offer. You're playing on the 5th-year option. We'll figure it out after this year." If that was the stance, it's like I wouldn't necessarily agree with it, but I can understand why they would do that. This whole not trading him during the draft, and then here we are in August, and all of a sudden trade talks are heating up between multiple teams, and you're trying to get one done. I don't understand that at all. I can't back that at all. It doesn't make any sense to me. I think the 49ers have screwed the pooch on the handling of this. They should have known that the wide receiver market was going to explode to a certain extent, and they should have been prepared for that. And it just feels like they really were unprepared for this situation, is the feeling I get by watching it from afar.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Giannis says, same guy who told us Trey Lance was a budding superstar and Purdy was a backup. Writing off Pearsall is a great sign for Ricky. I guess. I mean, if you would feel better about somebody who's been right about everything since that guy exists, saying Ricky Pearsall is going to come in and get 1,300 yards and do all the things that BA did right out the gate, then sure. I think I would feel a little bit more weary about somebody saying a rookie is going to come in and fill in the roles of a second-team All-Pro, but shoot, you know better than me, right? Trey Lance. Jerry Schetzel says, hey guys, what do you think about BA just loving the attention, which is why he hasn't signed with the Browns and the Patriots, and now Pittsburgh and Washington are out? Hey, Pittsburgh's not out, by the way. Everybody has reported they're not out. But yeah, I think this goes back to what I literally just said. It was like, hey, don't be afraid now, BA. You wanted this. Here's your chance. Dave says, my favorite player is Greenlaw, and we will lose him. Once my favorite was Jerry Rice and Roger Craig. Players move on. It's unfortunate. But I'm a Niner fan through and through. I love BA, but yeah, I mean, I think that's true. And that's something that we have to remember. I'm not ever going to actively root against a player leaving that I like, but I also understand that it's a business, and we have to keep that in mind here. PDX Niner says Ayuk's situation is slightly more complicated. New England can offer stupid money to Ayuk. Pittsburgh is a good franchise. 2 viable offers could equal a bidding war. Yeah, that's possible. It's only a bidding war, though, if Ayuk's willing to go. And that's the biggest thing. And we just don't know for sure who he's willing to go to and who he's not. We've heard, but we don't know for sure. That being said, it's 8:58. Come over to Roundtable Sports. NFC West Roundtable is going to be live in 2 minutes. Myself, 3 other content creators representing their respected teams in the NFC West, and should be a lot of fun. So come check it out. Come support the 49ers. Come support me if you've got the time. I would love it. Sunil, as always, thank you for joining me on Tuesday. Everybody in the chat, much love. I'll be back tomorrow with Grant. Talk soon. Peace.